Naira was an ordinary girl living an ordinary life in Los Angeles. Her days followed the same predictable pattern. Wake up early, brew her morning coffee, head to her small office job at a marketing firm, and return home in the evening, exhausted but content. She never imagined that her mundane life was about to be completely turned upside down. It was a bright Thursday morning when Naira left work, listening to her favorite playlist. The streets were crowded with cars, people rushing to work, and the usual loud chaos. She barely noticed the sleek black luxury car speeding toward the intersection ahead. Everything happened in an instant. Screeching tires, the deafening sound of metal colliding, and then darkness. When Naira woke up, she found herself in a hospital bed. Pain throbbed throughout her body, her head was heavy, and the beeping of nearby machines filled the room. As she tried to sit up, she realized she could barely move. Standing by her bedside was a man. Not just any man, but a tall, impeccably dressed figure who exuded power and danger. His dark eyes bore onto her, calm but commanding. "You're awake," he said. "I'm your husband." Naira's mind spun. Husband? How could this be real? She saw a set of papers in his hand, marriage certificates with both of their names signed. Her heart raced. She whispered, This isn't real." The man didn't smile. He simply nodded at the nurse, who confirmed that Naira's belongings were ready and that she was to leave with him. Fear gripped her chest. "Oh, I can't," she stammered. "I don't even know you." His expression remained calm. "You do now. And there is no choice. You will come with me." Naira had no idea what world she was stepping into. By the time she arrived at his mansion, the reality became impossible to ignore. The sprawling estate was more than just wealth, it radiated authority and control. Staff members greeted her with a mix of respect and fear. This was no ordinary home. This was a fortress of power. Over the following days, Naira tried to adapt. The staff treated her with extreme deference, following every command as if she were royalty. Adrian, her husband on paper, was stern, commanding, and dangerously charming. Despite her fear, she felt an odd pull toward him, a magnetic force she couldn't understand. One evening, while wandering the mansion's vast gardens to clear her mind, Adrian appeared silently beside her. "You're restless," he observed. "Oh, I just need to understand this life," Naira admitted. "I feel trapped in someone else's story." "You are," he said softly. "But I will protect you whether you like it or not." His words sent a chill down her spine. Protection from a man like Adrian wasn't comforting, it was overwhelming. And yet, a strange thrill ran through her veins whenever he was near. Days passed, and Naira quickly learned that nothing about this life was normal. Adrian's world was a dangerous one, where power, fear, and control ruled every corner. She noticed fleeting moments when his stern demeanor softened, subtle gestures, quiet concern, but they vanished before she could fully acknowledge them. By the end of the first week, Naira understood one undeniable truth. Nothing about her life would ever be the same again. Adrian, the man who frightened her more than anyone ever had become the center of the world whether she wanted it or not. Naira's first week in Adrian's mansion had been a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and unexpected curiosity. Every corner of the estate reminded her that she was no longer living an ordinary life. The grand halls, the perfectly polished marble floors, the staff that moved silently like shadows, everything screamed control and power. And at the center of it all was Adrian. He didn't explain anything. He didn't offer comfort. He simply expected her to adapt. But there was a pull, subtle yet undeniable, that made her heart race whenever he was near. The way he stood, calm and unshakable, with those piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her, it was both terrifying and intoxicating. One evening, Naira wandered into the sprawling gardens, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The city lights glittered below, but her mind was elsewhere, trying to make sense of this impossible situation. Adrian appeared silently beside her, as if conjured by the shadows themselves. "You're restless," he observed, his voice calm yet edged with command. "Oh, I just need to understand this life," Naira admitted, hugging her arms to her chest. "I feel trapped like I'm living someone else's story." "You are," Adrian said simply. "But you'll adapt. You have no choice." Naira felt a shiver run down her spine. His words were harsh, yet there was an odd warmth beneath them, subtle, fleeting, almost hidden. It confused her. How could a man who inspired fear also stir something unexplainable in her? Days passed, and Adrian began testing her in small ways. Not overtly cruel, but enough to show her that every move she made in this house was under scrutiny. Memorize names, understand hierarchy, know when to speak and when to stay silent. Each task was a lesson, and failure wasn't tolerated. Yet, even in these moments, he revealed glimpses of himself. a hand lightly on her shoulder when she stumbled, a brief, almost imperceptible concern when her fear showed it was enough to make her heart beat faster, to make her question the danger she had instinctively felt. Their first real confrontation happened one night. "You expect me to obey without understanding anything?" Naira snapped, frustration spilling over. "I don't even know what my role is here." Adrian's dark eyes fixed on hers, unflinching. "Life isn't about understanding everything, Naira. Sometimes survival and trust are the only options you have. Trust me?" she whispered, anger and disbelief mingling with something else she didn't want to admit. "I barely know you." Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And yet, you're learning. You're adapting faster than most." Her cheeks flushed, and she wanted to look away, but couldn't. There was a dangerous pull in the way he looked at her, a magnetic, intoxicating force that made her chest tighten. That night, as Naira lay awake in her lavish room, she realized a terrifying truth. Adrian was dangerous, not just to the world around him, but to her heart. Every glance, every word, every subtle gesture pulled her deeper into his orbit. And the thought of escape had become as thrilling as it was impossible. Meanwhile, Adrian observed her as carefully as she observed him. He noted her reactions, her hesitations, and the way she carried herself under pressure. She wasn't just his wife on paper, she was someone who intrigued him. Someone he couldn't ignore. The mansion held secrets, though. Naira overheard whispered conversations among staff, hints of threats to Adrian's empire, subtle references to deals and power struggles. Fear gnawed her constantly, yet so did curiosity. She wanted to understand this world, dangerous as it was, but she also wanted to survive it. By the end of the week, the tension between them had grown into a delicate, unspoken dance. Their interactions were filled with subtle touches, lingering glances, and moments where words failed them both. Naira hated that she felt drawn to him, yet couldn't deny it. Adrian, for his part, remained unreadable, stern and commanding, but his eyes occasionally betrayed a flicker of something more. And so, in the mansion that was both prison and palace, their story began. A story of fear, power, and a dangerously growing attraction neither of them could resist. The mansion was quiet in the early morning, but Naira could feel the tension that lay beneath its polished floors and grand halls. She had begun to understand that Adrian's world was not just one of wealth and luxury, it was a kingdom of influence, fear, and hidden dangers. Adrian appeared in her room as usual, his presence calm but overwhelming. "Today, you will see more of the world you are now part of," he said. His tone left no room for questions or refusal. They moved through hallways lined with priceless art and security personnel who followed their every step. Adrian led her to a private office, a room filled with screens, monitors, and stacks of documents. Naira's eyes widened. Maps of the city, real-time surveillance, lists of people and businesses. It was a world she had never imagined. "This is my empire," Adrian said quietly. "Every move, every decision, every person here affects thousands. And you are now part of it." Naira's pulse quickened. She realized just how powerless she had been outside this mansion, and now how completely immersed she was in a world she barely understood. Over the next few days, Adrian began introducing her to the inner workings of his empire. She saw the respect and fear people had for him, the kind that made them obey instantly, without hesitation. The weight of responsibility, the constant danger, and the calculated precision of every operation left Naira both terrified and fascinated. But amidst the fear, there were moments where Adrian revealed a different side, a side no one else saw. When she struggled to understand a task, he offered guidance, patience threading through his stern demeanor. When danger threatened, he placed himself between her and harm without a word. Those moments confused Naira. She hated that she felt drawn to him, yet she could not deny it. One evening, as they walked through the gardens, Naira asked quietly, "Why me? Why bring me into this world?" "I'm just me." Adrian paused, looking at her with eyes that were impossibly unreadable. "Because I saw something in you," he said finally. "Something no one else could see. You're strong, smart, and you're capable of more than you realize." Naira's heart raced. His words, though not a confession of love, stirred something deep within her. She wanted to trust him, but the fear of this dangerous world kept her cautious. Days turned into nights, and the mansion became both a prison and a home. Their interactions grew more complex. Small gestures, a hand lightly brushing hers, a glance that lingered too long sent shivers down Naira's spine. Adrian, ever guarded, never let her see the full extent of his feelings, but the tension was undeniable. One night, a messenger arrived with urgent news, a threat to Adrian's business operations in the city. Instantly, his demeanor shifted. Calm, commanding, dangerous, every ounce of power radiated from him. Naira watched, realizing the magnitude of the world she was now part of, and the danger she would face as his wife. When the crisis passed, Adrian turned to her, his tone softer than usual. "You did well today," he said, though there was no praise, only acknowledgement. Naira felt a strange pride mixed with fear. Pride that she had survived this new world, fear that it had only just begun. The next days brought small, fleeting moments of connection. A touch on the arm during a tense meeting, a whispered word of reassurance in their hallways. Each moment built a fragile bridge between them, connecting two people forced together by fate, danger, and circumstance. But danger was always close. Naira overheard fragments of conversations, plots, rivalries, unseen threads. She realized that her life was no longer her own. Every choice, every move, every glance could carry consequences far beyond what she could imagine. Yet, amidst the fear, confusion, and danger, one thing became clear: she could not ignore the pull she felt toward Adrian. And as he watched her from across the room, calm, unreadable, commanding, he knew the same was true for him. Their relationship, forged in fear and circumstance, was beginning to change. Trust was growing, attraction was undeniable, and the lines between fear and desire, danger and love, began to blur. And in the shadows of the mansion, with the city lights stretching far below, Naira realized one chilling truth: nothing about her life would ever be normal again, and Adrian's world had only just begun to reveal its true power. By now, Naira had begun to feel the weight of Adrian's world pressing down on her. Every step she took, every glance she gave, seemed to pull her deeper into a reality she didn't fully understand. Yet amidst the fear and the strict rules, something unexpected was happening, an undeniable attraction that neither could ignore. It began subtly. A brush of hands as he guided her through the mansion corridors. A look that lingered a little too long in the dining hall. A faint softness in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. These moments ignited emotions in Naira that she had never experienced before: curiosity, tension, fear, and something more: desire. Adrian, for his part, noticed every reaction. He observed the way her eyes widened when he came near, the subtle quickening of her heartbeat, the hesitant smiles that betrayed her inner turmoil. He had brought her into this world not just as a wife on paper, but because he needed someone who could handle the pressures of his empire, and somehow, she had already begun to prove herself capable. One evening, after a long day of meetings and emergencies, Adrian found Naira in the mansion's library. She was seated at a large oak table, her head resting in her hands, exhaustion clear on her face. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said quietly, approaching her. "I have to understand," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to know what I'm a part of." Adrian took a seat across from her, studying her. "Part of this world is learning to survive," he said. "And part of it is understanding that danger comes in more ways than one." His words, though warning latent, sent a shiver down Naira's spine. She realized that danger wasn't just outside in the empire, it was also in the way he made her feel. Fear mixed with desire, caution mixed with curiosity. She hated it, and yet, she couldn't resist it. The nights grew longer and more intense. Every time they were alone, the air seemed charged with tension. Their conversations were short but loaded, every word carrying weight. Adrian's usual calm and control made Naira more aware of her own emotions, of the pull she felt toward him. One night, during a quiet moment on the mansion balcony, the city lights sparkling below, Naira finally asked the question that had been on her mind since she arrived. "Why me, Adrian? Why bring me here? Why marry me?" He looked at her for a long moment, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. "Because I saw something in you," he said finally. "Something that no one else could see. You're strong, brave, and you have a fire I can't ignore." Naira's breath caught. His words were not a declaration of love, but they felt closer to truth than anything else he had said. She wanted to believe him, but fear and caution kept her guarded. Days passed, and their connection grew. Simple touches, accidental or intentional, sent electric currents through both of them. They began to understand each other in ways words could not convey. Adrian's control over his empire and her fear of it made the tension between them even more intoxicating. But danger was never far. Whispers of rivalries, threats to Adrian's business, and unseen enemies reached Naira's ears. She understood that being close to Adrian meant being close to peril. Every step she took, every word she spoke, could have consequences she could not yet imagine. And yet, the attraction persisted. Every time their eyes met across a room, every subtle touch, every fleeting moment alone, made Naira's heart pound. She hated how much she wanted him, and yet, a part of her thrilled at the danger he represented. Adrian, meanwhile, struggled to maintain control. He had never felt such a pull toward anyone before. Naira challenged him not with rebellion, but with her presence, her strength, and her undeniable allure. He found himself drawn to her in ways he could not explain, a tension that both frightened and excited him. By the end of the 4th week, the mansion had become a crucible of emotions: fear, desire, tension, and fascination. Naira realized she was no longer just a visitor in this world. She was becoming a player, a part of Adrian's life in ways she had never imagined. And Adrian knew that this was only the beginning. The attraction between them was growing, the tension was undeniable, and the danger of their world would test their connection in ways neither of them could foresee. The lines between fear and desire, danger and love, were beginning to blur. And both of them knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The mansion was cloaked in an eerie silence, heavier than usual. Naira's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing with a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. For days, she had sensed a shift in Adrian's demeanor, a quiet intensity that had not been there before. He summoned her to his private study. The room smelled of leather and old books, but the air was thick with tension, almost suffocating. Adrian closed the door behind her and took a slow, deliberate step closer. "Naira," he said, his voice steady yet layered with vulnerability, "there's something you need to know, something I've kept from you." Naira's stomach tightened. "What is it? Why do I need to hear this?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. Adrian inhaled deeply, his dark eyes meeting hers. "You didn't come here by your own choice. Your accident, it wasn't entirely by chance. I brought you here. On my boss's orders." Naira froze. Her eyes widened, and her heart felt like it had skipped a beat. "You brought me here on purpose?" she whispered, disbelief and shock coloring every word. Adrian nodded slowly. "Yes. The truth is, you were brought here so that the space tied to your name could be secured under my boss's control. It was a strategic move, to strengthen my position within the Empire. Everything you think happened by accident was carefully orchestrated." A rush of anger, betrayal, and disbelief surged through Naira. "You used me. My life, my trust for someone else's gain?" she asked, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and hurt. Adrian didn't speak immediately. His silence made the room feel heavier, more suffocating. Naira's mind raced. She realized that the person who had rescued her, who had seemed so protective, had also been part of a calculated plan. Yet, at the same time, she remembered the moments when he had genuinely shielded her from danger, moments that had felt painfully real. He stepped closer, his voice softening. "I never wanted to hurt you, Naira. Every step I took, every move I made, I protected you. Even if it seems like manipulation, it was always to keep you safe. And through all of it, you've discovered your strength. You've learned who you are in this world, and now, you have a choice." Naira pressed her hands to her mouth, struggling to contain the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Fear, anger, confusion, all of it was overwhelming. Yet, beneath it all, a small, undeniable awareness was growing. She was no longer a passive victim. She had endured, survived, and adapted. She had the power to decide her next step. Adrian's gaze softened, yet the intensity never left his eyes. "I brought you here, yes. But the emotions you felt, fear, attraction, trust, those are real. You've faced danger, you've seen my world, and through it all, you've proven that you're capable. That capability, that strength, that's yours. Your decisions are your own." Naira took a steadying breath, letting the weight of his words sink in. Despite the deception, despite the danger and the fear, she realized she had feelings: trust, a tentative affection, and perhaps the beginning of love for the man standing before her. She began, her voice trembling but determined. "I choose to stay. I choose this life not because of the lies, not because of the danger, but because I can. Because I want to make my own choices, even in a world I never asked for. And if it means standing by you, facing whatever comes, then I will." For the first time in weeks, a faint smile touched Adrian's lips. "Then we face it together," he said quietly, yet firmly. Every threat, every challenge, every dangerous moment together. The silence that followed was no longer oppressive. It was filled with an unspoken understanding. Between fear and betrayal, a bond had formed, a bond that was now tempered by honesty, acknowledgement, and a mutual respect for each other's strength. That night, Naira realized something vital. Even in a world built on deception, danger, and power, love and trust could take root. The past could not be erased, but the future, uncertain, dangerous, and thrilling, was theirs to face together. As they stood side by side in the dim light of the study, she understood that her life had changed forever. The betrayal had not broken her, it had made her stronger, more aware, and infinitely more determined. And Adrian had become more than a mysterious, dangerous protector. He had become a partner in every sense of the word. By the end of the night, Naira made a silent vow. No matter the challenges, the Empire's enemies, or the secrets that still lay hidden, she would face it all. Not as a pawn, not as a victim, but as an equal, standing beside the man who had deceived her yet protected her, and who now relied on her strength as much as she relied on his. The mansion, once a symbol of fear and manipulation, now felt like a battlefield they would navigate together. And in that battlefield, Naira and Adrian discovered something neither had expected. An unbreakable bond forged through deception, danger, and undeniable attraction. The night was quiet, the mansion bathed in the soft glow of the city lights outside. Naira and Adrian stood close together, their hearts beating in sync, the weight of the past days, the fear, the tension, the uncertainty momentarily fading in the intimacy of the moment. You know, Naira, being close to you changes everything, Adrian whispered, his voice a mixture of tenderness and intensity. Naira looked up at him, her heart racing. In that suspended moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. She reached out, letting her hand rest in his. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her, a mix of anticipation, desire, and a deep, unspoken connection. Adrian leaned slightly forward, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You don't know how much this being here with you means to me, he murmured. His eyes held a storm of emotions, care, longing, and something vulnerable he rarely showed anyone. Naira's lips curved into a small, nervous smile. I wanted to be close to you too, she said softly, her voice trembling slightly, but her resolve clear. Her fingers tightened around his, and in the quiet of the room, the only sound was the steady, rapid rhythm of their hearts. Slowly, Adrian brought her closer, and their foreheads touched. The heat between them was electric, a charged mix of fear and passion, of relief that they had survived the past, and the unspoken excitement of what this moment could mean. He kissed her gently on the forehead, a promise of protection, respect, and desire all rolled into one. For a few blissful minutes, the world outside ceased to exist. The mansion, the threats, the Empire, the past manipulations, they all vanished, leaving only the two of them, hearts open, emotions raw, and a bond that was both passionate and fragile. But the moment of intimacy was fleeting. Dawn had not yet broken, and a sinister reality arrived at the doorstep. The faint hum of the city was suddenly replaced by a loud crasher sound that echoed through the hallways and shattered the delicate calm. Adrian's eyes snapped open, darkening with alertness. Naira, stay behind me. His voice was sharp, urgent. The danger was immediate, undeniable. Masked men stormed in, moving fast, armed, their intent clear. They were the enforcers of Adrian's boss, sent to punish the two of them for their forbidden closeness. Their mission: intimidate Naira, strike fear, and remind Adrian that his choices had consequences. Adrian acted instantly. He pushed Naira behind him, covering her body with his own. Don't hesitate. Follow me. We run now. Adrenaline surged through Naira as she grabbed his hand, the chaos around them intensifying. Bullets struck walls, shattering glass, and the echoes of gunfire filled the grand mansion. Shadows moved rapidly, and every step forward felt like a gamble with death. But Adrian's precision, his intimate knowledge of the mansion's secret passages, guided them. They sprinted through narrow hallways, slipped down hidden corridors, and ducked behind pillars. Smoke and dust choked there, but they pressed on, unyielding. Every heartbeat was a mixture of fear and exhilaration, yet their connection, the memory of the moments they had shared, kept them steady, focused, and alive. By nightfall, they emerged outside, far enough to catch their breath, but still within the looming threat of pursuit. Their clothes were dusty, torn in places, and their bodies ached from running, but the relief of survival brought them a fragile calm. Naira looked at Adrian, her chest heaving, eyes wide. We made it," she whispered, still trembling. Adrian squeezed her hand tightly, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of their attackers. "Yes. But this isn't over. We have to leave the city. Now. If they find us, they won't stop." The gravity of the situation sank in. Their safe haven had vanished. Their life in the city, the empire, the power, the familiar danger was now a trap. The only option was escape, and the unknown awaited them beyond the city limits. Later that night, they drove in silence, the hum of the tires on the road blending with the rhythmic beating of their hearts. The city lights disappeared behind them, replaced by stretches of dark roads and a faint glimmer of distant towns. Fear, adrenaline, and the memory of their intimate moments intertwined in the air between them, making every glance charged, every touch electric. Naira felt the thrill of survival mix with the warmth of their connection. Despite the terror of what had happened, the danger, and the betrayal, there was a new strength in her chest. She realized she was no longer just surviving, she was fighting, loving, and choosing. and for the first time, she felt like she could face anything with Adrian by her side. Adrian's voice broke the silence. "We'll be safe soon, Naira. A new city, a new life. No one knows us there. We get to decide who we are, who we want to be," she nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Together," she whispered. "Always together." Even as the night stretched on, with every mile they put between themselves and the city, a new chapter began. The Mafia's reach might still follow them, threats might linger, but they had each other. And in that bond, a blend of love, passion, trust, and survival, lay the unspoken promise. They would face whatever came next, together, unshaken, and unbroken. The story didn't end there, it had only entered a new phase. Danger, desire, and uncertainty would still shadow their path, but the choice to run, to survive, and to love freely marked the beginning of something neither had expected. For the first time, they were not pawns of any one empire, they were two people, bound by passion, loyalty, and the thrill of escaping a world that tried to control them. And as the city faded behind them, the darkness ahead was no longer threatening, it was the canvas for their new beginning.